Hey everyone, welcome back to the Homemade Haven. Today we are going to set up our final pig pen. I promised you guys a few weeks ago that I would show you the step-by-step process. So far we've got 3 pens set up. We've had our pigs in there since January timeframe, I believe, and we've had 0 breakouts. All right, today we're gonna set up this 4th and final pig pen. We've set up the other 3 using this American Farmworks power wire that we bought at Tractor Supply. We've ran 3 strands of it around each pen. Each one of our pens are approximately 50 to 80 feet wide and about 80 to 100 feet deep. This gives them more than enough space to root through the woods and forage and just do pig things. Before we get started building this pen, I want to show you kind of a before and after of what they'll do to the property. This area behind me is what will be the 4th pen. Quite overgrown with underbrush and trash and whatnot. This area behind me now was the 2nd pen that they were in, and you can see all that underbrush is gone. And I don't know how well it comes through on camera, but I can see all the way to the back fence line from here, which again is about 100 feet, maybe 150 feet through the woods, whereas before you can't see 5 feet into the woods. So pigs will get in here and clear out some underbrush for you. But the idea is to at least give the pen some time to rest, the ground to recuperate, life to start growing back in these areas, and for parasites and things like that, so it can break down and just kind of die off. Anyways, that's not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is how did we build these pens? What materials do we use? How does it all work together? So yeah, let's get started. For materials, we have several different types of insulators. We've got a crimping tool. We've got some metal crimps, the American Farmworks power wire, step-in post, fiberglass rod post, and 6.5 foot T-post. There might be 1 or 2 more things that come up as we're going through here. Step 1 in setting this fence up is clearing your perimeter path. We came through, I don't know, 3 months ago and cleared out a path through the woods where we knew we wanted the pens to be at. So once you've cleared your path, then you can come in and set your rods in place. All you need is a rubber mallet or some kind of hammer, and you can easily hammer them into the ground, or at least where we're at, our soil is pretty soft and forgiving. Fiberglass posts make it easy so that you can get around. You have a lot of low areas and high areas where the terrain goes like this. You can put them closer together so that you can, when you pull your wire, you can kind of contour the line. You want to leave your first wire, your bottom row, somewhere between 4 and 6 inches off the ground. So these are the fiberglass rod insulators, come in 2 pieces. Essentially, what you'll end up doing is sliding this piece down over the fiberglass post, and then this part screws on, it's supposed to screw on, to give it tension so that you can set the height adjustment where you want it. And then whenever you're running your wire, you kind of run it up and under, I don't know how well it comes through, yeah, up and under through this hole here. We'll look at that later. I've got about 1,000 of these put together, so. Okay, we're gonna try to do this one-handed to show you how these go on. Slide it down over the post, put it where you want it, and then you just tighten it up so that it stays tightened up against the post. We've got the rod insulators installed, and now we've got the T-post insulators to put on. They just basically wrap around the T-post, stretch it out just a little bit before you snap it in place. You're gonna take the short side and wrap it first, kind of put pressure on this piece and pull out on the long side and just wrap around and then snap it in place. Or one of the other pieces that I wanted to show is they have these, it's like a pulley for the corners. It allows you to use one continuous string for each row, and when you pull it tight, it doesn't get bound up on the corner. Got our power wire ran all the way around our bottom row, and before we tie off to this T-post, you want to put on one of these crimp pieces. Just slide the wire through it, and then make sure that the crimp piece is on the inside of the fence. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this wire and we're going to wrap it around the insulator. And then I like to, after you've got it wrapped around so you have good tight connection, take and weave it around itself or braid it around itself a few times. And we'll leave a little tail on the end of it. And we'll explain what this tail is for later. Then we take the crimp piece, we run that tail back through it. And pull this all the way back up here near the insulator. Grab our crimp tool, bite down. It gives us good solid connection there. Keeps it so that it won't back off of the insulator very easily. It's tied off on the other side, and now we need to tie it off on this side. Before we tie it off on this side, there's two pieces, or really one key piece that we want to put on, and that's one of these wire tensioners. And this will just help as the wire, as your pigs bump into it or they root up against it, in just time it will start to sag. So you have these tensioners with a crank on it, and you can crank the wire to tighten it up. So again, before you tie it off to this last insulator, you want to run your wire through here. Just go straight through the middle. Next step is to take your crimp piece, slide it on, just like the other side. We're going to wrap the insulator once or twice, and then we're going to braid it around a few times. Slide our tail back through the crimp piece and snug it up against the insulator and crimp it in place. So now we can give this one or two cranks. You don't want the wire so tight that it's going to break if it gets tension on it. Just tight enough so that it's not sagging and touching the ground. We've got the 3 strands ran all the way around now. As you can see on this fence over here, it ties the 3 lines together. This way, when you clamp your power source onto one of the 3 wires, these tails will transfer that voltage to each other. And there's a specific reason you do it this way, and you don't run one long continuous wire that wraps back and forth. One, if you run one long continuous wire that wraps back and forth, the electricity has a longer way to travel. And 2, if there's a break in the line anywhere, wherever that break is at, the power would quit going to the other side of the break. But by tying these tails together, if there's a break in one of these 3 lines, the power can still travel up the tail and power the other 2 lines. So all we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this bottom tail, I'm gonna come up here to the middle wire, I'm gonna wrap it around, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times. And there's not really a perfect method to this, or any specific method you have to follow, so long as all 3 lines are tied together. Boom. Showed you the other 2 types of insulators we've used. This is the last type, or the 3rd type. This is another T-post insulator. You back the threads all the way out of this U shape here, and it slides over the T-post. And once you get it back down where you want it, then you tighten it back up. Be careful not to over tighten it because it'll strip the threads very easily. So just get it a little bit snug. And what happens is your wire connects, or your gate connects to one side of this hook, and then the wire connects to the other side of this hook, just like here. I'm not going to touch it because it'll pop the crap out of me. But this piece of plastic is what keeps this from being charged. Okay, so the next step, we're going to build our gate. One of these T-posts right here, over and across to this T-post. So we're going to need 2 of the crimps, little metal crimps. We will need a piece of wire about 10 feet long and a gate handle. Again, the first thing we'll do is we'll thread the wire through the little crimp piece here. I put the gate handle with tension on the line to where it's barely touching the TPost insulator, and then I pinch the wire in with my hand like this, and then I let the spring of the handle kind of make the rest of the connection. That leaves your wire pretty tight, but not too tight to where it's going to tear the wire at the back of the handle here. Braid it around, twist around a few times, slide the crimp piece back over, crimp it in place, and we're done. I've got the front wire from the two corner T-posts tied together now. This is where the step-in posts are going to come into play. See, on these other pins, the step-in posts we have run along the front. These are meant to be a temporary solution, so we weren't sure if we were going to have the fence line this far out or if we were going to move it back into the woods or whatnot. So eventually I'll probably build, and eventually being a year or two from now, I'll build more permanent fencing on the outside just for aesthetics and for, you know, structural purposes. But the step-in posts work just great. But they help keep the wire off the ground. The only reason we couldn't use the step-in post back in the woods is the ground was too soft. So the rod insulators allow you to pound them in the ground a little bit further so you can get just more structural support. We use an IntelliShock 60 from Premier One. It's got built-in grounding rods, so you have to do is slide the battery and the solar panel down into the ground, and then you'll take the negative lead and you clip it onto the bottom of the grounding rod, and then you have your positive lead and you hook it to one of the wires here, and we'll take a fence tester and see. It is right now hitting at 6,000 kilovolts, 8,000, 6,000. That's a hot fence. Let's do a quick walkthrough of the whole setup one more time, just an end summary. Started out with this corner T-post. This was the beginning of setting up the whole fence. So I set it in place. The next thing we did was we went around and we installed all the fiberglass rod posts, add the insulators to each of the rod posts and to the T-post. Then we started to run our wire. You want to have 3 individual wires or multiple individual wires. And then you use these jumpers in various locations. A set on this side and a set on the other side. We might could add a set in the back. And again, what those jumpers help do is they shorten the distance the electricity has to travel to get from one row to the next. And if there was a break in a wire somewhere and we couldn't see it, the electricity could still travel, you know, row 1 to row 2 or row 2 to row 3 or what have you. Another thing to remember is before you wrap around the end of your wire and get it all nice and tight and pretty, don't forget to put your little crimp piece on or your tensioner piece or whatever. I don't know how many times I got to getting everything all nice and pretty and snugged up and then remembered I forgot to slide something important on. So don't forget to do that. Also, in the materials list that I showed earlier, don't forget that there are multiple applications and ways that you can set this up. You don't have to have T-post. You don't have to use step-in post. You don't have to use the fiberglass post. There are setups where the insulators actually screw into trees themselves. So if you don't want to spend the extra money, or if your setup allows, and you can screw the insulator into a piece of wood that's already in place or a fence that's already in place, maybe you already have a pin setup you want to add hot wire to, you can buy the different insulator pieces to adapt to your application. So again, we started out paddock 1. They were there for 4 to 6 weeks. We moved on to paddock 2 for about another 4 to 6 weeks, and now they're on paddock 3. We just set up paddock 4, and probably in about 2 or 3 weeks we'll move them down the line. And then when we're done with paddock 4, we'll probably move them all the way back down to paddock 1. The good thing about pigs is they're food driven, and so as long as we move them first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon when they haven't eaten for 12 hours, all we have to do is put food all the way down at paddock 1 and open the gates, and they'll follow us right down to paddock 1 with no issues. That's it, guys. I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you don't leave here with questions, but if you still have questions, you'd like a further explanation, leave your comment down below. Give us your feedback. I would like to learn as well. If there's something that I did incorrectly that you would do differently, let me know. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you guys on the next video.